You never know when opportunity will strike. In this case, it was a trip to the range for Karen Butler that gave her the idea of what became Shoot Like a Girl, in addition to the recently launched Safe Living initiative. It's their mission to empower, educate, and introduce men and women to the firearms community.
This is the No Excuse to Miss podcast.
Welcome to the No Excuse to Miss podcast. I am your host, Scott Volquartsen, and this week we are fortunate to have two guests with us, Karen Butler and Christa Forrester. Karen is the founder and president of Shoot Like a Girl, and Christa is the chief of staff at Shoot Like a Girl. Welcome to the show, both of you. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic. Life is good.
That is good. I know you guys, I appreciate you guys taking the time because I know in looking at your schedule, you guys, it gets really busy coming up for you guys, so I appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to be here. I was going to say, Christa just got back from Prattville, Alabama, where we launched our Safe Living truck with the public. So it was a really good experience.
So let's kind of jump into that. I think people may have seen or heard about Shoot Like a Girl. You know, the trailer that you guys use is impressive. But for those that haven't heard, can you give us a kind of a brief background of what Shoot Like a Girl is and then the safety initiative that you guys just recently added?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit and then I'll turn it over to Christa. So Shoot Like a Girl was really started after I got introduced to shooting sports late in life. And I started the company because the very first time I went shooting was like the lowest point of my life. I actually felt like a failure. I was in the middle of a divorce. My kids spent 1 week with their dad and 1 week with me. And even though I was successful in a civilian career with the Army, I felt like a failure as a mother because the one thing I should have done was kept my family together and raise my boys in a happy home. And it just didn't work out. And when my friends saw me moping around when my kids went with their dad, they're like, "We're going camping." And I was like, "I am not going camping. Like, no, I don't want anything to do with outdoors." And they insisted, and I went, and I shot a gun for the first time. And I wish I could remember what kind of gun. Maybe it was a Volquartsen. I don't remember. But I shot this gun and we were shooting Gatorade bottles out in the mountains of Colorado. And I shot it and the orange cap flew off the bottle. And I asked, "Can I shoot the orange cap?" And every time I hit that cap, it just jumped up in the air. And I felt, I feel good about myself. And that feeling kind of transcended to everything else in my life. And I had this thought that if we could just introduce women to shooting, they would find that they also enjoyed that feeling of feeling good about themselves and having, in times where we're also critical of ourselves, especially for women. I just wanted women to be able to have that same feeling that I had of feeling good about themselves from aiming at a target and hitting it. And so we started Shoot Like a Girl years after I was first introduced to shooting. And so exciting. And then this year, in our 15th year, we launched Safe Living. And Safe Living, so I guess I should explain what Shoot Like a Girl is for your listeners that don't know. So we have a semi-tractor trailer that travels all across the country, primarily to Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. And inside, ladies can shoot a pistol, a rifle, and a bow. And then outside, we have guns from our partners like Volquartsen, where people can actually experience those firearms and see what they're like. They're all deactivated, so there's no chance of a round being in them or someone getting hurt, but they're able to really look at those firearms and see what the options are available to them and make the best choice. And as we traveled around, we introduced Safe Living this year in our 15th year because we found that there are more men and families and communities that are wanting that same information that we provide to our ladies. And everybody wants to feel good about themselves. So I'll let Christa talk about that first experience that we just had launching Safe Living with the public, because it was quite, she's got some stories.
Great. Yes. So we just got back from Prattville, Alabama, where Safe Living had its first public experience. And interestingly enough, some of the A/B tests we've thought about with our new logo and new color kind of seem to have come to fruition. We went from pink and girl on our main trailer to orange, and safety orange triangle, but yet it's actually the Grand Tetons. And it seemed to be a welcome sign to everyone, right? So where before some people might have been like, I'm not sure. This was just like, what is this? Let's see. And so we saw a lot of people at the trailer, and Bass Pro in Prattville is 121. Men, women, children, old, young, you name it. And I've got some incredible stories from it.
Yeah, because I'd imagine with the Shoot Like a Girl name that even, like you said, everybody wants to feel good about themselves, but it's probably going to limit or, reduce any guys from actually coming up and visiting the trailer unless they have a female with them. So was that one thing that you got, when you, a couple questions here. So when you took Shoot Like a Girl from the concept of you had from that first time on the range to reality, how did that process look? And were you worried about like some of the stereotypes that, especially back then, I think were more prevalent than they are now with women in the industry?
Great question. So first off, yes, it's what I expected it to look like, but not really. As an entrepreneur, you make a business plan and you set your goals, and then sometimes that business plan takes off. And we've been very able to adapt. The name of Shoot Like a Girl. So when I first started, it was archery only. And our first 4 years, we literally were so mom and pop. I had vinyl signs that my dad had made for me, and I'd hang them up in a little 10 by 10 booth. And I'd introduce people to archery in that first 5 years of our company. And we had some naysayers, for lack of for a polite word. The naysayers would like, shoot like a girl, why? And all the guys would walk by, because then there was only like 7% of us in the industry that were women. And so as they'd walk by, they were just a little abrasive sometimes. But what I saw over time is this transformation where it wasn't, oh, that's bad, to, oh, I want my wife to do this. I want my girlfriend to do this. And as we continued to press forward, we really found more and more that men are just as supportive. I mean, quite frankly, I would not be where I'm at today without the men in my life that have helped push me forward. And we had people think that we were going to be like an anti-man organization because we said shoot like a girl. And that's the farthest thing from the truth, because we value everybody. And it's just been an incredible ride. We've had some women not like the shoot like a girl. And what I want them to realize is that for shoot like a girl, it's not look at me, I'm a girl. It is really kind of an attitude that's right, I'm a girl. Let's move on. So that's really where we were.
So like if somebody were to come to the trailer, and I think you guys, we've talked, you guys are out in front of a lot of the Bass Pros and Cabela's, among other areas. But like when somebody comes, what can they kind of expect, to find? Because I'd imagine a lot of them have questions and are probably, even though it's, geared towards them, they might be intimidated coming up that first time, not knowing what to expect.
Right. So just as you were asking that question, I was trying to put myself potentially in their shoes, right? So being a part of it, being there on the ground from our perspective as contractors with either Shoot Like a Girl or Safe Living, we've got rose-colored glasses on. We know exactly what it looks like. But we're not the guy or the girl that's selling popcorn or almonds at the corner, right? It's not that easy of a message when they come walking out of the door and they see logos and they see display tables and they're watching interactions. They see demos happening and people at the gun counter. And so from their perspective, I can imagine it's like, what is this? Almost an interest, right? Curiosity that would bring them over. We're usually right there at the door, whether it's on the way in or on the way out. So we have an opportunity to have conversation, whether they actually participate by signing in and going into the trailer, or they just walk up to the gun bar and walk down the line and participate with an instructor. Maybe they just step in on a demo, and that's all they actually do at that moment. They get some interaction and some connection to the shooting industry and helping them be a little more educated to the next steps and things they need to do.
Well, and what do you guys think makes for like that good first introduction to the firearm world? You know, Karen, you had it when you said you were at a low when you got brought to the range. And, you know, I've heard stories sometimes of how it goes horribly wrong, how people are presented firearms in their first trip to the range. What do you guys think goes right and really resonates with those first time firearm or first time being introduced to firearms?
Well, I think what the biggest thing is understanding why people are apprehensive to begin with about firearms. And what we found is that it's out of a fear. They're either scared that they're going to hurt themselves or someone they love. They're scared that they can't do it correctly. And they're scared that they're going to look silly while they're doing it. And so they have these fears around them. And so a lot of common mistakes that good intended people make is when someone says, hey, come on, I'm going to take you to the range. And they say, no, I'm scared. They tell them, which is true, there's nothing to be scared of. And so what we do instead is we embrace that fear and we tell them that it's okay to be scared. That's going to help them be a more safe, responsible gun owner. And then we break things down into really no correct vocabulary terms, right? So we talk about the grip as this part, and we don't explain it in technical terms that make somebody think, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. I'm never going to understand all this technical things. So I think the secret to what we do is really breaking it down into basic terms and also acknowledging that fear. And I think Christa has something else.
Yeah, I was thinking it is that introduction and that breakdown, but it's also the incredible team that we have with us on the road. We're very particular and we really spend some deep time with each team member, whether they're on the archery side, the firearms side, or even maybe it's the staff or contractor that's just the welcome committee or the demo person, to be able to read what that guest might be feeling or pick up on senses that they have so they can kind of coach them and guide them for what they need, not just here's a script and you must say this and then hopefully it's stuck, right? So I think we pride ourselves on our staff as well.
Which obviously probably comes from the top down with you two working with the staff. And is that something that you guys have just kind of learned over the years of working with hundreds and thousands of people, what will work and doesn't work?
So yes, I mean, we aren't afraid to change things, but honestly, the process that I started the company with is the same process that we use today. It has been tried and true, and it's just breaking it down into whether you're shooting archery, a handgun, or a rifle. It really is stance, grip, sight alignment, trigger press, enjoy. And we don't talk about anything else. And so we don't go into breath control, even though we know that's part of a great shot process, but we really just break it down into those basic things so that they can enjoy that experience. And it hasn't changed a lot. What does change, though, is kind of what Christa touched on, is what our instructors bring to the table. Because I may explain a process one way to somebody, like what that sight picture should look like to them. And then our instructors bring another way. And so through this really collection of these fantastic instructors from all across the country, we've been able to, like when I find somebody that's not understanding the way I'm explaining it to them, I can go to somebody else's terminology or vocabulary and explain it differently. We use a lot of analogies. We use for releasing a slide, we tell people it's like opening a jar. That's the tightness you want. So we have all these different vocabularies that explain it. And each one of our instructors brings their own kind of explanation for that. So it makes it a lot of fun, and it makes sure that no matter what client we have in front of them, we know we're going to be able to get that message across.
And it's probably much easier for them to remember terminology like that than the actual very technical description of what's going on. Because, it's easy for us to forget how far we've come in the firearms industry. that when you're first learning to have all, it can be an overwhelming experience. And when you have all those technical terms thrown at you on top of all that, I don't see how, typically most people aren't going to remember those once they leave that trailer. So what are some of or did you have something to add there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm surprised Karen didn't jump in. That's why I was waiting to see if she was going to answer. Scott, you touched on something really realistic in our industry, is that most people that have a little bit of time on the ground, some time in a class, and have added some training to their lives, put themselves in the category of an expert. And so they use those technical terms. And that new person to the industry, whether it's an outdoor experience or anything in this world, one of the first ways they can really truly learn about it is to have some kind of connection. So if we can connect them from what they're doing here to something they can connect with in their real everyday life, it's an aha moment, even though it might be just a small one.
And it gives them that comfort factor that wants them to come back, where if they're completely intimidated, they're going to say, well, that was okay, but that's not for me.
Right. It's their first step in confidence, right?
Yes. Which, the more confident they become, the more fun it is. I mean, anything where we become more confident at becomes more fun. So what are some of the challenges that you guys, some of the biggest challenges you guys face now that you are almost 15 years into it?
Well, we just had a little challenge with a truck. So I would say as an entrepreneur, I'm still learning every day. And I have a funny story that I'll share with you. And the title of this story is Listen to Your Husband. So we just bought this great, beautiful trailer. And unfortunately, when I first found a trailer to purchase, it was a bumper pull trailer. And so I found the truck because trucks were a premium to find, still are today. So I found the truck, bought the truck way before I actually purchased the trailer, but we had found the trailer and put a hold on it. When I went to pick up the trailer, they had just received a second trailer that was much grander, and it was in my budget, still the same budget. And they're like, you can have this or you can have this. I'm like, no brainer. We're taking the big one for the same money. And I got that trailer, so excited, got the truck wrapped. Everything's going great. My husband and I go to North Carolina, where we use Brandon tents to build out our trailers. And we were checking it out. And my husband looks at it. We jump back in the truck and we're getting ready. I'm all excited. My husband looks at me. He says, honey, this truck is not going to pull that trailer. And I'm like, no, it's got the right engine. I checked that. And he's like, no, you need a long bed for that because it's a gooseneck. And I had a short bed truck. And so I get on the line and I'm like, I'll find a solution. And so I found this thing called an extend-a-hitch, which is supposed to be grand, right? So add to the trailer. So buy the extended hitch, long story. We're on our way to debut this to the industry at Range Day, Industry Day at the Range for SHOT Show. And Friday night, the night before it's supposed to be parked the next morning, my driver goes to get gas and he turns a little tight and pops the back windshield out of the pickup truck. So,
oh no,
I know, right? Like, this is a lesson. So this is my challenge in life. And we need truck drivers. That's another plug I'll put. But so we, Saturday morning, we replace the window. We re-decal it because we make our money by selling advertising space. And someone had purchased that. So I owed them to have it debut with their logo on it. So I had the window decaled. We get out there Saturday. We have a great setup. And on Saturday night, I went and bought a long bed pickup truck in Las Vegas. And so now we do have a truck for sale.
At 4:00 in the afternoon.
In Vegas, yeah. Yeah, it was an experience. So these are the challenges that we face. They're really entrepreneurial and We never have a challenge with our staff. We never have a challenge with our guests or our partners. All of our challenges are really those behind the scenes that nobody else can see but us, that are the logistics and the moving of things that sometimes aren't easy. But we have some tenets that we follow. One is we refuse to fail. The second is that for every problem, there's normally a simple solution. So even complex problems have simple solutions. And so we follow those two tenets, and we work really hard to make sure that nobody knows. Like, none of our partners, till I told the story, none of our partners would know that we, were scrambling around bribing people to come to the trailer on Saturday to put a decal on, so, and we're just very fortunate. So all those things, right? So even those challenges, I just have to add this. I have to say, even with those challenges, I think that we're presented with them so that we have a true appreciation of everything that we've achieved to this point. And we are just very blessed and very grateful for the opportunities that have been presented. And we hope that we're always doing good.
Well, that was something I was going to mention too, with a credit to you guys, is if you look at the partners and sponsors that you've, partnered with and been able to work with over the years, it's some of the biggest brands, in our industry, which is pretty cool to see them get on board with this mission that you guys are doing. And I think it probably speaks to, all the way back to when you went to the range for the first time, but a bigger purpose than, it just being a business. Obviously we all want to make money, and you got to do that to keep the lights on. But to me, it seems like there's a bigger purpose, which is what drives you guys, to keep going, to overcome those challenges and find the solutions.
Right. And that's a great
and that was something. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's just such a great segue into safe living. And that really, Shoot Like a Girl felt like a purpose, but safe living truly feels like a vocation or a calling, because we're focused on really public safety outreach and making sure that all of these people that are purchasing firearms and want to or have recently understand that responsibility of owning that firearm and how to be safe with that firearm. And it's just... I felt like as we went to Safe Living and we rebranded, because the original business plan had just adding a Shoot Like a Girl truck. The goal is regionally everywhere. But we had to also look at the industry and see the data that we were presented and know that there are couples that are in their late 60s that are making the decision to buy a firearm for the first time. And they waited a very long time to make that decision. But if you Google firearm safety, we have such great resources out there, but it really doesn't. A lot of it is hard for them to understand or digest. And then once you get past the NSSF and the NRA, which are great resources for firearm safety, then you get all these groups that aren't necessarily focused on safety, but cloak themselves in safety. And so if you go to one of their websites by mistake, you might go to Safe Storage and learn that you should have a law for safe storage, not this is how you store your firearm. This is what a cable lock looks like. This is what you need to do to keep your family safe. And as we saw people with this knowledge, I guess I'm talking too long, but we really just feel like there's a need to promote safety, to make sure that people, if they're buying a gun for home defense, that they understand that they need a plan. That it's not good enough just to have the gun on the nightstand. The nightstand's not the appropriate place, like all of those things. And we've just been really lucky, and we've had a great team. And I have to give a lot of credit to Christa. I for a long time, I hired people that were workers. Like, they helped me get the work done. And I made the decision that I needed to hire an executive. And if I hadn't hired Christa in her role, and I will tell you, so I just recently promoted her to vice president, and her role really now, I can step away. She went I was able to focus on the launch of Safe Living, and Shoot Like a Girl continued to run seamlessly. And without having that really dedicated extra executive in the company, we wouldn't have been able to do it all.
So I have two questions, one for each of you on that. And this one, Karen, how tough was that with this company that you built to kind of start, I don't want to say completely turn over, but delegate so much of what was your baby to somebody else?
Well, I'd say,
because not just here, but a lot of businesses and a lot of business owners struggle with that very thing.
Yeah, I'm a little of a control freak. I'm not gonna lie, but a prime example, and really just a godsend. So this last weekend, my son got promoted to major. He didn't control that date that his promotion happened, and we were launching the Safe Living trailer at our first public event. And I stepped away and didn't worry. Maybe once or twice would I send a text, "Did you remember X?" And Chris is like, "Of course I did." But I stepped away from that, and Christa really ran that event. So it was hard at first, I'm not going to lie. But I think when you invest in the right people and you just know, I mean, Christa and I are very similar, but so different that it makes a really good partnership as I move the company forward. I have a sounding board that doesn't think the same way I do. And so, but appreciates the same goal. And so when you have people around you that are thinking differently, like I'm a rip the Band-Aid off person, and she's let's look at every step along the way before we make that decision. And so it really combines into a great, and then I've always had a rule that if somebody ever has little like hairs on the back of the neck about a decision or a direction that the company is going, we stop everything and value that feeling and make sure that we look at it. So I guess that's a long answer to say it was hard, but easy at the same time, because we really do have a phenomenal team of people.
That's great to hear. And I think it's, a credit to you to be able to do that and turn over some of that. So Christa, in reading your background, you came from a family business, if I understand correctly.
That is correct.
How does that transition go from growing up and from what I understand, you went all the way to the top of the family business, reaching president, to then moving into something like this? What lessons can you take from there, and what are some things that are completely different from the business environment?
So good and bad. And in my role now with Shoot Like a Girl, coming from a family business, your dedication to what happens doesn't ever shut off. I remember in one of your previous podcasts, you talk about the kitchen table or the dining room table being your conference room, and having those family events kind of merge within existing life. And so that was my work ethic. I learned that early on, being a part of that family business. And of the 5 children, I was the only one that participated in the family business and grew along with the business, allowing my parents to create a succession plan, which turned out extremely beneficial to them in the end. And then I stayed within my industry. So I come from the medical gas industry, and we actually sold our family business to an international company. And I hung on, finding my roots, deciding what I wanted to do with my future, moving into the firearms world personally, and then have an incredible airport conversation with Karen to be able to jump over into this role. And I do think that work ethic that comes from the family business, even the negative side of it, the often working when you're shouldn't be working, or your mind going in the middle of the night, and even what I would like to catch one of Karen's phrases is the good idea fairy. Because as a business owner, you begin to think of other ways and things you can do to grow to the next level. All that coming to the table has made this a next level success in our ability to work well together, and allowing Karen to then grow her next step, which she had written originally in her original business plan. This is just, I came into the picture at the right time so she could act on it.
Well, that's awesome. So what is the like you guys just launched the Safe Living. What's the next vision or next plan? Can you talk about where you'd like to take it from here?
Well, yes. I mean, we definitely, so I have a 20-year business plan. But I will say we're taking a tactical pause right now for this next year. So we're going to make sure that we do things. So the biggest challenge we have is we set an extremely high standard for everything we do. And so we can't just go throw something together and have it be adequate. It has to be at that same high standard. And so we're going to concentrate on safe living for this next year and Shoot Like a Girl and make sure that those experiences don't get diluted in the least, and that our guests have that great experience and our partners feel the value from what we do for them so that they continue to support us. But then we definitely have a map for things that we're going to do in terms of growth for the company. We're working on our swag sales. So we've never done a good job at selling swag, even though the first year of the company, I lived on t-shirt sales. Now today, it's not something that we focus energy on. So we're going to start doing some additional things to raise money, raise funds. But, and then I guess we'll come back in 2 years and tell you what the next thing is, because it's out there.
Sounds good. And from that marketing side, selling t-shirts and different things, do you guys see the same issues trying to market on social media as like so many in the firearms industry do? Or are you guys able to get around that a little bit with your message?
I was waiting to see if Christa was going to take that one. So
nope, I'll let you take that one.
We've not had the same challenges that firearms manufacturers have, I don't believe. We're stuck in an Instagram algorithm that we are slowly and methodically chipping away at. But for Facebook, I literally challenged every time that they blocked something and went back to that I'm not promoting firearm sales. I'm not promoting their negative use. I'm promoting confidence in women. And we've just really continued to do that. It wasn't easy, to just continue to challenge. But that's what I did. And we've been successful, and our Facebook following is growing still, and our Instagram is doing great. We've got some great talent in our content development team with Ashley Mallard Photography, and we utilize the Murray Road Agency. So, and then of course our fantastic team of instructors. So we've not had as challenging of problems, but we're also very conscientious and very careful. Now, safe living, I'm super excited for, because that is all about safety, and we don't have the same deliverables for our partners as we do with Shoot Like a Girl. And for safe living, our focus is definitely on making sure people in general, men, women, families, and communities. And when I say communities, I'm talking about if you identify as a guy with glasses, we have a place for you, because we feel like safety is something that everyone is concerned about right now. Everyone is looking at the world and wondering what the heck is going on. And we want to be that resource where they can get information on how to live securely through safe living.
And you brought up something earlier that I didn't even think about. So many times when we think of new firearm owners, I automatically think of a younger demographic. But you mentioned like you guys have couples in their 60s coming to you, and it might be the very first time they've been introduced to firearms. And where do they get their information from? They're doing it to protect themselves. And like you said, the world we live in, it's completely understandable. But where do they get that safety information from? And I think that's where you guys are really filling that void and giving them, not just filling that void, but doing it in a way with very solid information, that very practical information that they can use, not just, so many times we see like you said earlier, there's information that we get, but then you usually have to buy something on the back end to make it work. or there's a pitch coming at some point, but you guys are just out there really giving value, which is awesome. Outside of like that, do you guys see like some commonalities between your regular like audience that, you know, even though that might be different regions of the country, different demographics, are there commonalities between them that when they're coming into your trailer?
So I think the commonality is that they all have some sense of fear. So if they're considering a firearms purchase, where there were years where when we measured the firearms sales, if they bought a firearm, what was their use for it? And recreational shooting was always almost as high as personal protection for that firearm. But that demographic has changed now, and really they're focused on personal protection, and recreational shooting is falling. And we're trying to increase that recreational shooting because buying a gun and having it is not good if you don't go practice with it. And where you practice is through recreational shooting. And so we're really trying to push that. But I just looked, so our demographic, so this was so interesting. 30% of our guests in 2022 were between the ages of 50 and 59. And 17% of them were 60 or older. And 57% of our guests were over 40. And so we really are seeing that higher, that age where people are tired of my personal perception. I haven't surveyed this recently to know, but my personal perception is that people are fearful in their own homes and their own communities of their own personal safety. And they are looking for ways that they can increase their comfort of feeling safe. And, you know, they might buy a gun and increase their comfort, but if they don't go practice, if they don't learn those firearm safety rules, if they don't get some training and some education on, you know, let's first avoid any negative situation instead of thinking that I have a gun and I can go be, you know, John Wayne and save the day. We really are focused on that.
Well, that's awesome. And like I said, at the beginning, I was talking about your guys' schedule. The one that I was interested in that you guys have coming up is
Altoona,
at
Iowa? Oh, no. I just assumed
well, that
it would
one's
be
going to be
Iowa.
nice and close, yes. No, I was looking at the one you guys are going to be at Daytona Beach the same weekend, I believe, as the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, kind of a cool event with that many people that are going to be in that area that you can service. So are you guys always tied into like the Bass Pro and Cabela's, or are there standalone events that you guys do too?
So the majority of our events are either at Bass Pro Cabela store locations or in conjunction with them at specialty events. So with Daytona being the Daytona 500, we've actually been there once before. We were there in 2021. It was the year that things were starting to come back, and they had opened the track to half of the guests. So I think there were 30,000-ish tickets sold, and so that was basically social distance spacing, right? So you would have half the guests in the stadium, and it was phenomenal amounts of people that we saw. This year, it is fully sold out. I learned from a trusted resource that even the campsites are sold out and overbooked, and they're expecting a phenomenal crowd, not only the ones that are going in the track, but are going to be hanging around because they're hoping someone's going to have access for them to the track. And so we expect that to be just, I don't even know what the right word would be until we're there and we can see it. It was such a big deal in 2021 to even think that it's going to be bigger than that. We're going to need to take our extra vitamins that day. The rest of our stops and locations, we do a few unique events for Bass Pro, but we also do corporate events. We do conservation events. RMEF will be this summer, and that's where our schedule currently lies, which is right now at 30 events a year. So if you think about traveling with a truck or getting to a truck for 30 events a year, and how many weeks are actually in the year and having a life outside
That's
of that.
That's a full schedule.
That's a full schedule. Karen mentioned earlier about the next steps. Some of them had to do with our merchandising and giving that some new energy and bringing it back to the front. But one of the things that we've done this last few years is incorporate team leads, allowing Karen and myself to not be at each event, which then allows for that next level growth. And one of those things that is on the docket that's not being paused is both of us have speeches and presentations that over time have been given, whether it's in the business realm or in the personal realm, and trying to allow some of that to come back to life as well. Now that we've got a strong team lead group that can keep the truck rolling, keep the teams going, keep the guests connected, and we can then connect from another space without the truck being there.
Well, that's awesome. So I have one final question for each of you, and it's something that I try to ask all my guests is, and I think, Karen, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but it's just a matter of, I always feel like there's one thing that happens in our lives, and it could be good or bad when it happened. But if we look back, we can kind of point to that singular event that put us on the path we're on now. So I have for each of you, can you guys point to like a singular event that has done that for you?
Oh, wow. Well, so outside of my story, which got the business plan started, the business idea started, I would say the singular catalyst to actually having a thought and taking it to action, I have to attribute to my husband. So my husband's a Marine, retired, and he had been deployed. And when he returned, he took a class that, helps Marines transition from being deployed to being back in civilian world. And they had the Women's Small Business Center of North Alabama come in, and this lady, Hillary Claiborne, gave a speech and talked about this loan that they had for veterans or their spouses to start a small business called the Patriot Express Loan. And my husband came home from this training super excited and said, honey, you have to call this lady. They have all these free services. There's a Patriot Express loan, which was actually a grant and guaranteed 95% of the loan. So super easy to qualify for. And he told me, you've got to do it. You've had this idea to start a business. You have to do it. And I was like, okay. But then I worked full time for the Army, 40 to 50 hour work weeks. I was had very demanding job, for lack of a better word. So anyway, as my husband just kept harping on me, like he would not stop and said, you have to go. And so finally I called her, I set up an appointment, I sat down and I looked at her and she said, bring your business plan. And I was like, a business? Like, what's a business plan? I Googled it. And I presented, like any good Army civilian would, my business plan on PowerPoint. And so I went in and gave a PowerPoint presentation for what I thought my business should be. And at the end of it, I looked at her and I said, look, if you said, I want you to do this, I'm going to hire you to do this, I would tell you hands down, you should hire me. I can make this happen for you. But for whatever reason, I can't hire myself. And she looked at me and said, what do you have to lose? And that was the end of it. That started the whole thing. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And that's really, so my husband going to that class was probably the singular transition and his belief in that I could do it.
Which takes a lot for your spouse to be completely behind, at the time, what was just an idea. Does it ever strike you or hit you, or do you ever just sit down and reflect on how many people you have touched since you launched the business?
Yeah. So I track that number, honestly. And it's overwhelming to think that we've done something that we still have ladies, like a lady from the first year where I was in business still follows us on social and reminds me constantly that her accomplishments now in the shooting sports world and in time, really time with your family. Like if you break down shooting sports into what it gives us, at the end of the day, it gives us quality time with our families and the people that we love and we enjoy spending our time with. And when I see these pictures now that are generational, from she started so she could be with her husband to now with her kids to now with her you just have this continuum, and it's really it's overwhelming. And again, I go back to just pure gratitude and knowing that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, and I try to stay humble, because it's also hard when you're very successful at doing something to make sure that you don't get a big head and that you realize you still have to work hard and treat people with dignity and respect and be kind and all of those things. And you have 10 times more to lose than when you started with nothing. You now have something to actually, lose. So, but I'm just grateful. I mean, I'm so thankful. I wish I could say a better word, but it's just an overwhelming feeling of gratitude for the opportunities that I've had to make a difference in other people's lives.
Which I think you've said, or I think that was very well said. And, what really more can you ask for out of a business than being able to do that for people? So congratulations to you and Shoot Like a Girl. I mean, it's really awesome to see what you're doing. Christa, do you have like a similar story that you can point to?
Sort of. So this is going to be firearms industry related 100%, but I was raised in a family and an extended family that had absolutely no connection to firearms. No hunting, no family heirloom firearms, nothing tucked in the corner. I don't have a traumatic situation that I felt the need that I needed to learn about firearm. But what I did have was I was married into law enforcement with my first husband, who is the father of my children. And at the time, I didn't understand this, but when he would come in contact with us in his uniform, he did not want us to touch that side of his body. We were not allowed to hug him on that side. He didn't want the kids near it. I wasn't raised around firearms. This seemed like the legitimate way to treat a firearm. And as a lot of relationships do, ours waned, right? And we separated. And when I remarried and got into a new relationship, my husband now is absolutely the opposite when it comes to firearms. And he brought firearm discussion into our group, my children and I. We were all three a little taken back in the beginning. Like it was like, whoa, why are we having this conversation? We've never had it before. I was completely unfamiliar with it. And then as we learned what it meant that firearms exist. And because firearms exist, we've got to learn how to be safe. And when we can be safe and we can enjoy it and go out and actually put a tin can down the line and hit what we're aiming at. And I didn't hunt till I was an adult, but now in that spectrum, actually full circle, provide food for the table. It's a whole new experience. So I would say that one little moment, the day that my husband sat with us and just started the conversation, as scary as it was the first step in what has become absolutely who I am from head to toe.
And to me, that's what probably allows you to do such a good job at what you're doing, because you've been on both sides of that spectrum of never being around firearms to now being a firearms trainer and very proficient in all those things. But, I really think it's incredible what you guys are doing. And I think as an industry, I think we need to get behind your guys' cause even more because of how many people you are impacting and the way that you're doing it. So I appreciate you guys both coming on. I've enjoyed this a lot. And I know I've even learned some things with the way the Shoot Like a Girl and the Safe Living Initiative are, taking place. Is there anything you guys would like to add?
I would just like to tell you thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to your listeners, as well as what Volquartsen does to support our initiatives. You were one of our first without hesitation. Yes, we're going to participate in safe living, and your brand that your family has built truly embodies more than a product. And I think that it's really important that people recognize those are the keys to success. Success is measured in sales for sure, but success is also measured in the character of the company and the leaders of that company. And what you've done and your family has done is really just remarkable in how you've changed that rimfire world for all of us for the better. And so I just appreciate you. I appreciate your support of SLG2 Inc. And I guess the last thing I'd say is everybody go like us on Instagram, SLG Inc. 2. Right.
Yeah, and we will post that as well, because like I said, what you guys are doing is truly amazing, and there's a reason, we're just a small player in the industry, but there's a reason that the biggest companies that we have in our community, in our industry, are behind what you guys are doing too.
Yes.
Which is something I think that's pretty cool, is you have everybody from the very top, the largest companies down to companies of our size getting behind what you guys are doing. That speaks volumes to the way you're doing it.
Thank you.
So again, I appreciate you guys both taking time and look forward to seeing you soon. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening. And as always, if you have any questions, hit us up at podcast@volquartsen.com.